Fortnite changes quite constantly. Every week the deck of weapons and utility gets shaken up and new and old weapons come and go, which means new metas and new techniques become developed over time, and sometimes new uses are needed for a new patch. And there's also quite a lot that makes up Fortnite. Sometimes simple things can be overlooked, and an item may be unused since players really don't see its full potential until much after it's been released. So today, we're going to be looking at some of the best ways to use what we have available to us, from rotating, weapons, and some utility within the game, and we're going to look at how to use these items to their full potential. But before we hop into the rest of the video, I'd just like to ask you guys to leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy my content, and to also hit that notification bell to make sure you know when I release new videos.
Also use code SLAGE in the item shop. Thank you.
We've had a rough season in terms of mobility available to us, with jump pads and hoverboards being the best we've really had for long-range mobility. The community has had to come up with some new and unique ways to rotate with specific items that may not generally be used on full squads, or may not have been used or intended to be used in rotation at all. Shockwaves are by far one of the most versatile movement tools available. You can rotate full squads yourself, but you can also take height, break into boxes, etc. Moral of the story, it has a lot of uses that make them a great option no matter what game mode you're playing. Rotation wise, they let you move quickly, and unlike a jump pad, you're not gliding slowly through the air, which makes the best choice for rotating, as the chance of getting beamed out of the sky is much less likely. There are 4 different positions that I recommend using to get a different angle of launching with a shockwave. For example, throwing a shockwave at a wall will send you more directly in a certain direction. Throwing a shockwave at the bottom of a ramp gives you a little bit more arch to your launch. And throwing it at the roof is always going to send you downwards and through more builds. As well, on the flip side, throwing at the floor is typically going to send you pretty much upwards. Now, each of these are better for different situations. If you use the ramp to arch your launch during a late game, where it's going to be a little bit more packed, there's a chance that you're going to launch yourself right into other players' build and right into another player's box. So just be aware of your surroundings when deciding on which direction and which position that you use an impulse in. But as well, there are a couple of different ways to shockwave as a team, because the worst thing that can happen is using a shockwave and everyone landing on completely different areas of the zone. So the 2 ways that I like to rotate as a team is first, using the ramp method. So you start by whoever is throwing the impulse in the middle, and the 2 other players will be W keying on either side of you, and that way it keeps you pretty tight together while launching. The other way this is going to work, and it's going to be a little bit better for squads, is editing a stair into a curved position and then having the players standing accordingly. This will work for both trios and squads, but it does require a little bit more setup. Now, by far one of the coolest ways I've seen utility used for rotation is throwing the bubble onto a hoverboard. This way you can move the bubble with you while rotating, and as well your squad can run next to you safe inside of the bubble. You used to be able to use it with a bush by throwing it on yourself, but sadly that doesn't work anymore, and it has to be attached to a vehicle for it to be used in rotation. This method with the hoverboard though was used a ton during the Fortnite Champion Series finals. Players would use them during the bigger circles when rotating, and it would typically cost quite a lot of mats and saving because they were able to use it to move instead of having to use shockwaves, launch pads, or building to get themselves in the zone. This way they could even get a better spot than they would with that limited type of movement. Now with these past 2 updates, we've gotten the Batman grappler and bounce pads, both which can be used to send you much farther than before. But a little lesser known trick with the Batman grappler is if you shoot it directly upwards at the meteor, it sends you super high as the meteor gives you that sort of bouncer pad effect. Although this works awesome as a way to get super high and fly as far as it can take you, you have to be careful as you can't dive downwards after you launch. So if someone does see you flying through the air, you're going to be an easy target if you don't find somewhere to land. And now, with bouncers making a return, so do super launch pads. If you haven't used them before, basically you use the bouncer to bounce you into the launch pad, and it sends you up way higher than a normal launch pad would. There's a couple ways you can do this. The easiest way is by placing down a ramp with the bouncer and then the launch pad at the bottom. Otherwise, you can use a wall. Both work quite well, but I find the ramp just to be easier to navigate in between both the pad and the bouncer to make it easier to hit. Both do work well, and you can choose which one that you prefer to use. Now, bounce pads can be used in some other ways though, disengaging height, pushing height, and even dashing. They're pretty powerful, and for me, I think they're invaluable. Now, if you're using bouncers to push height, I recommend doing it when your opponent is somewhat on your level or maybe one or two higher than you. Otherwise, it's going to be really easy for your opponent to pump you in the head when you're bouncing up. I recommend spamming 2 walls on either side of you while you bounce up to help support you taking a height. This is a pretty psycho thing to do at times, but if someone isn't expecting it, you can easily snatch height and take control of the fight. Secondly, I'll combine both these together because I think dashing with a bouncer is so cool. Basically, all you do is place a bouncer and immediately follow up with a ramp above you before you get sent up. It'll send you forward like the dash does and doesn't require you to turn around and place the bouncer. This is also a great way to bounce off a build fight or get down from height. This won't send you up in the air before falling back down again, and you don't have to turn around to place a bouncer on the wall, and it's just a much easier way to send yourself back down to safety. As well, say you don't get that bouncer down in time to launch yourself off of height. You have a second option if you're fast enough to place down a bounce pad on the ground while you're falling. Now, one thing to note is you can't turbo build this as it actually won't place. But if you do spam your left click, it will easily place down fast enough, and you will save yourself from dying if you're falling to your death. As well, weapons don't always have the most clear-cut understanding off the rip. For example, the Deagle had the power to one-shot wood walls for at least a month or so before becoming the meta. Even though it was in the game, people weren't always using it for that exact reason, and therefore almost losing usability with it. My favorite example of this is the flintlock. I actually did an entire video on it a while ago because it has so many uses. But I'm going to sum it up in some of my favorite ones right now. Basically, one of my favorite uses of the flintlock is a combination of 2 and 1. The absolute huge amount of damage that it does. If you headshot someone, you can hit them for 190 damage if you're close enough. This is 100% guaranteed as well, unlike a shotgun where you can sometimes hit a 30 or a 200. But the other side of this is if someone is gliding towards you, or if you're on high ground in late game, shooting somebody with a flintlock will actually knock them off their glider and chunk them for a good amount of damage. They sadly don't take any fall damage, but this still is a great way to stop them from contesting your height and kind of getting them away from you. Otherwise, using it as a follow-up weapon within box fights is a viable option as well. Like I said, it does an absolute ton of damage, which makes it a great option for following up after pump, as it's kind of like using a double pump as you're putting out 2 big chunks of damage back to back. Unlike a pump SMG, which following up with an SMG only does damage that's smaller over time. Now sometimes a buff to a weapon or utility may not be direct. One change leads to another, and then all of a sudden a weapon is 10 times more powerful. And this is what has happened with every single fast fire rate weapon currently. Because now when a wall breaks, there's a 0.15 second period where something can't be placed down in its spot. So if something can shoot fast enough, it'll be able to sneak bullets through that gap easily and gets you some free and easy tags. A few tips that I like to keep in the back of my mind when using these weapons is always be aiming at their head through a wall. If you can catch them off guard before they can even place on a build, it'll make it a lot easier to get some heavier hitting tags off before they place the wall down to protect themselves. Another thing, if you are using a minigun, it does have a small initial recoil to it. So you do have to slightly adjust your aim when spraying to make sure you're constantly connecting with your shots, and more importantly, connecting with your headshots. There are more powerful weapons within the game, and different combinations of weapons that you can use. Having a single RPG, double heavy sniper, or heavy sniper RPG. All of these are using some of the 2 most powerful guns within the game, but they're not the only. But their combos are great for sneaking RPGs through walls, catching somebody off guard with that RPG heavy sniper. But what if you're in solos and you can't justify holding both weapons? Well, there are some great ways to use these in conjunction with normal weapons. For example, one of my favorites is shooting an RPG at a wall and then shooting your shotgun at where the player would be to hopefully hit them before they can build a wall to block the shot. When using the heavy sniper, if you catch somebody off guard, you can use the heavy sniper to snipe their wall and tag them a couple times with your AR. Both these aren't perfect, but they are better than doing nothing, and not using these overpowered weapons as much as possible is worse than failing while trying. Now, we don't really have much utility in the game currently in terms of throwables. There really only is stinks and grenades. But there is a really cool trick to split all of your grenades evenly within your squad or trio, and then for you to spam them all at another team. You can also place down a marker, and if you look at the right height, your grenades will actually explode directly on impact, making them far more effective to get tags or illuminations, as players you throw the grenades at don't have time to react to the nades. Now, otherwise, stinks don't really have a cool trick, but you just kind of throw them and they do damage. But don't throw them at yourself, it kind of hurts a little bit. Unless you have 4 campfires, because you can out heal them, and it's okay then. Thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed all of it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as it helps me create more content for you guys. As well, hitting the notification bell to be notified when I release another video will help keep you guys up to date. Don't forget to also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch to see just about everything that I put out. That is all. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you all real soon.